Well, as we continue our conversation in Proverbs 11, I want to pick up our reading in verse 16 and 17, where it deals with the issue of being kind or, adversely, to be ruthlessly cruel. The text reads this way. It says, a kind-hearted woman gains honor. Literally, she gains respect. But a ruthless man gain only wealth. And then he says, those who are kind benefit themselves, but the cruel bring ruin on themselves. Or literally, it says they bring their own destruction into their life. It's kind of speaking of the truism that we know well from places like Galatians 6, where he says, you'll reap what you sow. And that concept of reaping what we're sowing is so slides off our tongue so easily and so effortlessly that sometimes we really don't give a lot of thought about how that should be applied to our personal lives. In other words, the idea of reaping is that I know that when I plant a seed or I plant a start in my garden, like I do with tomatoes and other things every year, I put them in my garden, I know that whatever that tag on that plant says it will be is what's going to come from it. Now, I have had those occasions where I planted a tomato and the variety that came up was not the same that was on the label, and oftentimes it was a pleasant surprise, but nonetheless, I know that the reason why it didn't match the label is because the label was wrong, not because the root was wrong. And I think this is where we need to really kind of look at it, because we often look at the fruit of our life in various areas and we're disappointed by the consequences. We don't like what comes as a result of whether it's an investment or a relationship or any number of things. And we go, well, I expected something different. And the problem is that we don't take enough time to inspect the root before we plant it. In other words, we operate on a premise that is faulty. And one of the premises is if you're involved with somebody who generally tends to be unloving, unkind, even to the point of being kind of ruthless and cruel. In other words, they're more concerned with winning and getting ahead and achieving their goals or getting what they want than they are about doing what is right in the eyes of God. Then you should know that that's a tip-off, that's a hint, that's a suggestion that this is a person who, given the necessity in their mind or the opportunity, will take advantage of you. And so when you are engaged with people, it's really important not to look at the outward appearance, what you see on the surface. They may be charming, they may be attractive, that you may enjoy being with them, and they're very kind and flattering and make you feel good about yourself. But really, all the commitments that we make in our life with other people should be made after we've had a season of experiencing who they are. Paul, in writing to Timothy, put it this way. He says, don't put a man into a position of spiritual leadership until he has proven himself. In other words, till that person has a track record. There's kind of a trajectory you can look at and saying, this is who they have been through the years. Now, Jesus put it a little differently. He said, judge the tree by its fruit. Because whatever it produces in its existence is really an evidence of what's going on in the heart. And at the end of the day, what really matters about people is their heart. Because we live in such a superficial culture where things are really evaluated just by the image that we can present. And certainly digital media has just added to that, because we can actually not only present a different image than what we really are, but we can manipulate that image in such clever ways that we look a whole lot better than what we really are. We may even sound a whole lot better than what we really are. I mean, it's getting kind of freaky because they can put people in situations and make you think they're watching a video of their actions when it's basically AI generated. They didn't do it. They didn't say it. It's not them. But you can also find that many times even the way a person speaks can be imitated. It's scary to think about. Somebody did this with me recently. They took some of my messages and downloaded them to AI, and then they had a text that they wrote up for me to read, and it sounded just like me, and yet it had nothing to do with me. I was never involved in it. Now, that's pretty frightening to those of us who are in public situations. We know that whatever we do or say can be manipulated to create a whole different false impression or false image. But that's the idea that it comes down to the end of the day, who do you get yourselves committed and involved with? Well, you want people whose hearts are centered on treating you kindly, and you need to be focused on treating other people with kindness, because God has not treated you as you deserve to be treated. He's treated you always with kindness. And when you do that, you'll find that other people will honor you, they'll respect you, and they'll trust you. On the other hand, there are some people who are ruthless, and ruthlessness is its own kind of cruelty. Not only will it eventually destroy the person who is being ruthless and cruel, but it will also bring a great deal of hurt and pain into your life. And so when you see people who really seem to not care or like or respect or regard other people, especially if they're rebellious and speak evil of those who are in authority, then you need to take that as a important caution and realize that these are not people that you really want to entrust yourself to. You don't necessarily have to not be nice to them or have nothing to do with them. They're just not the people that you want to be closely entangled with, so that their actions affect you in a negative way. Their bad behavior can be something that may grieve your heart, something that you can pray for them about, but you don't want to have to pay the price of having trusted them with your heart or with your house or your hands or your works or your heritage or your legacy or whatever, people who have a track record of not being trustworthy. Well, blessings, much to think about there, I'm sure.